So I'll call the meeting to order. The first item on the agenda after the quorum check is approval of the minutes from our last meeting. So do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
Well, I would approve, but I wasn't there, so I think I shouldn't be the first to make the motion.
I move to approve the minutes from the July 2024
Okay,
meeting.
move to approve by Hubbard. Do we have a second?
I think I can second. Let's get it over with.
Does anybody have any corrections before we vote? These were sent to you in advance.
No.
Okay. All those approving say aye.
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 Any nays? All right. So the next item mark these approved. All right, the next item is a secretary. Kelly, would you, we did share your bio. Kathleen had also talked about your performance on Virginia Voices as a reminder to people, but
Actually, that
would
was
you-
Kathy Haley, but
was it Kathy Haley? Sorry.
Yeah.
All apologies. So Kelly, if you would like to talk a little bit about yourself and if you want to talk a little bit about why you'd like to serve as the secretary, it doesn't have to be a big campaign speech. And then we can vote on that.
Sure. I'm Kelly. I have been around Poetry Society of Virginia for probably around 2 years. And I am looking for a way to get into poetry and a life around poetry. And so email that said, hey, we need a secretary. And I thought, hey, I can be a secretary. And David was kind enough to send me the information about it. I've got lots of admin stuff in my background. I was in the military and basically did a bunch of admin work. So administrative processes are kind of my jam. So I think it would be a good fit.
Any questions for Kelly?
no, you have a very nice CV. I think we'd be lucky to get you.
Thank you so much. That's very kind.
Any other nominations? Anybody want to move
Yeah, I can move on this one because I'm present. I move we move forward with accepting Kelly White as the secretary of the board.
Second.
Second by Joanna.
Joanna.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? All right. Congratulations and thank you, Kelly. You're now a member of the board and secretary.
You.
I'm typing notes, but if you want to begin, you can certainly do that also, and then I can email you my notes.
Sure.
Okay, I'm not aware of any other old business. Does anybody have any? Yeah, old business requiring action.
Mm-mm.
I'm sure this is a little different than what we're used to in previous meetings, but I don't chair meetings like a poet, so I apologize. I'm a little more formal, but hopefully it gets us through the agenda faster that way. We, at this point, don't have a contest committee. Nan Ottenritter, whom I knew in my previous life with the Virginia Community College system, she worked for the central offices, and she has volunteered to be on the contest committee. Kathleen, thank you so much for your service on that committee in the past. Kathleen has volunteered to give advice and counsel to whomever takes on that task now.
And I just add that I actually have a video which is available about how to use Submittable, and I trained judges for 2 years on how to use Submittable. So those things are all available, and I will tutor people on Submittable if necessary. I just don't want to chair the committee.
No, I think you've borne that cross more than once. That should be good enough for a while. So is anybody aware of others, or is anybody present interested in serving on the committee? Should we ask anybody from last year if they'd be willing to serve again? This is a discussion item.
Well, you can ask David, but I talk with Guy Terrell pretty often, and he's not willing to do it again. And John Barry actually stopped doing things on the committee partway through, so that leaves Derek Cannemeyer, and he's served on that
Derek-
committee more than once too.
Definitely does not want to do it.
Yeah.
About previous years, I mean, it would be nice to have somebody from a previous year that has some experience that we could, I mean, if we can't really dump it all on Nan. Well, since Nan's the only one that asked, I'll ask her if she wants to actually chair with tutoring from Kathleen, and then we'll have to do what we can to try to find, I mean, the chair is the most important role. But it's good to have 2 or 3 people in the administering of the contest. Obviously, we then have to recruit judges as well. People who have been judges in the past often are willing to do that part again, at least. I'm not sure where we house the names of previous
am.
judges, if Kathleen or Joseph knows.
Yeah, I know, Dave. So just as a bit of history, if people don't know, so this last year I did not chair the contest. I did it for 2 years before that. Terry did it for a year before that. And Terry and I kept Excel spreadsheets of all the judges. So I have lists for the last 3 or 4 years, except for this year. And I'm sure Guy would be kind enough to send me this year's Excel. So we have 4 years worth of judges, and he changed a number of the judges this year. So some of them were overlapping with prior years, but a number of them were new. And that's something Terry and I tried to do too. So if you have 25 judges, we would try and have at least 5 or 6 new ones that had not done it the year before. And that's pretty easy to do because there's a pretty big talent pool. Judges, as most people know, they get paid, so they're willing to do it.
Good, that helps a lot. I know Derek and company were trying to eliminate some of the contests as well, and I don't know if they actually eliminated any of the categories or not.
Now we ended up with 27 instead of 25.
So we eliminated a -2.
Yeah.
The
thing that comes up every year with that too, David and board, is that some of those categories are endowed, and the endowments were.
We lost you, Kathleen. You frozen. I think what she was going to say is some of the endowments have been depleted.
Up, so people are frozen.
You're back now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, let me turn off
I
some
think it's-
things on my computer.
I think your connection's a little hinky. The rest of us were moving and you're freezing, Kathleen. Did I hear you say that some of the endowments are gone and so we're funding those out of our general fund? Lost her. So that's something I think we need to look at. We do not have a steady income outside of memberships and contest fees. And we can't afford to operate in the negative.
Yeah, but our T. Rowe Price account has basically recovered most of the expenses we spent on the centennial. It's back up to 43,000. It was 54,000 before the centennial, and then it went down to about 35. And David Wayne will have the details, but basically went up again.
Well, this all feeds into an agenda item down further, but first, the festival that we did not have, but I think had a wonderful substitute thanks to Kathleen's Summer Festival, and we were able to have our annual meeting, which is required of us. So I'm assuming we want to get back to having a May festival somewhere. Am I wrong in
I'm
that?
sorry, I don't mean to talk so much, but David, I've been in contact with Henry Hart, and if we want to go back to William and Mary for this next year, that is an option, and they're actually working on how they can reduce costs for us.
Okay. I mean, there was nothing wrong with the library downtown. Parking in Richmond sometimes bothers some people, but it wasn't horrible. But William and Mary is where we began, so it's nice to be able to do it there. So Henry would be our contact.
Well, it maybe. He's going to be on sabbatical in spring, but he and I have been talking about how I can work if you delegate it to me with the leadership in the English department.
Are you volunteering to help with the festival?
Yeah, I think that's the one committee I'd be willing to do for the rest of this year because I have a relationship with Henry, and it just, he's pulling back from his work duties, but he wants to see this happen again.
Yeah, I know he's been threatening to retire.
For years.
Okay, so if Kathleen, if you'd be willing to chair that group and then recruit the needed people to help out. We want once again have a business meeting, an annual business meeting that normally takes an hour, at most maybe an hour and a half. Related to that, but different, is all the elected, oh, I apologize. I forgot to do one important thing. I forgot to introduce Jenna Vilforth-Vesey. Because I am acting president. I have not taken the duties on in place of our president. Jenna has volunteered to serve as acting VP for the North Central region, which means she can participate in the meeting, but she does not have a vote because she's in an acting capacity. So if you want to say hi and anything else you'd like to say to introduce yourself, Jenna. And some of you may know her from the Poetry on the Trail.
Yeah, thank you. Zooming in from North Central region, King George County, and learning a lot about our region that David has let me experiment with. So we've had at least 2 meetings the last 2 months, and looking forward to doing some more, getting some new faces in our region. So thank you for letting me listen in today.
Nobody will want me back as vice president since you're doing such a great job.
I'm sure that's not true.
I'm kind of hoping some younger person takes over. But anyway, thank you for introducing yourself and for doing this. In the spring, we will have elections for all elected officers, the vice presidents, president, so on. So at some point, we're going to have, and we don't have a nominating committee. So my experience in the past has been the nominating committee is normally 3 people who are currently on the board. And doesn't matter whether they're going to run or not, their job is to gather a slate and seek out and people who are willing to nominate themselves or be nominated to run for the positions. And then we'll have to, I'm not sure how we did the election 2 years ago. I think it was a combination of an online ballot or an email. And of
It was
course,
both.
and then of course, people in person who did not vote can also then vote during the in-person meeting. So it'll be a busier May because of the election and so on. But the person running the festival does not run the election. That's too much on one person. So we'll need 3 volunteers from this body to serve on nominating committee. Anybody's willing to now, let me know.
I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you, Joanna.
There's going to be a pregnant pause till somebody else volunteers.
Silence
do it.
works in my classroom, so
I can do it.
Kelly,
I can do it.
thank you.
Sure.
I can volunteer as well.
And that's Joseph. Okay, thank you. Does anybody remember who coordinated the election last time? It can be a resource.
Oh dear, I'm
Was that
afraid
Terry?
it's sort of me again. No, it was sort of me again. Terry and I, Terry was president, and so what we did was we had electronic ballots and we tabulated those.
Okay, well, I'll put you down as a resource. Hopefully people won't bug you too much, but this whole
The festival.
This, of course, highlights why an item is on the agenda for us this year to try to develop a procedure manual. If you don't have the history, organizational history to pass forward, it makes it really hard for succession, so, and consistency. All right, Wayne David, WD, would you talk about budget development and the screen? Let me make sure I turned on. Yes, anybody can share. So if you do want to share something, you can do that.
All right, awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. I do have a few things to share. And as I talk through this, I will definitely be asking you all for some help. I would like to start with the treasurer report of the activity that's taken place since our last meeting. This is really the activity that has taken place since June, the June meeting, which I was able to get out and meet a number of folks. And after that, I had discussions with quite a few of you to help get me up to speed on what's going on and what needs to be paid. So at the top, these are some of the major movements that took place since that June meeting. We renewed our web domains and our PO box. We paid initial deposit for the annual poetry contest book. I worked with Derek on that. I'm not sure if anyone's had discussions with him about where that's at, but I'll put that on my to-do list to reach out to him. Drafted a budget of 2024 This is probably more of an income sheet. So what I did, and again, I've been in the role since February, and there was a lot of ramping up for the poetry contest and then figuring things out as we go. But I tried to take a look at what's been spent over the course of this year. And on the next page that I'll show you is what that breakdown roughly looks like, our income and expenses to the best of my knowledge. And the idea is to take that information and to project what a 2025 budget will look like. However, this will very much be a work in progress, and everyone's input will help get it to where it needs to go. We have a finance committee. That's good news. I reached out to Guy, and he's willing to be on the finance committee. I'll be looking for a third. The guy was a previous treasurer, and he's been a lot of help with some of that historical knowledge. We filed our IRS form for tax year 2023, which ends in June 30th. So we're up to date there with the IRS. And I developed a little process with Gail to take a look at the online signups for new members and then forward that over to Gail on a more frequent basis. So I've been able to do that at least once every 2 weeks. And that way, hopefully she's able to update her information. And then lastly, myself and our archivist, Mr. Jablonski and David Sam talked through a number of some of the IT issues and maybe some solutions. This is taking a look at where our web domain is at and some of these other things. And just drafted up a short white paper on some things that can be worked on long term. Having said that, for the actual financials at this point in time, we have $7,560 in our Truist Bank, $1,148 in our PayPal. The PayPal is what people use online to sign up for new membership. Our T. Rowe Price July statement is at $41,651, and Guy's last message was that it's up around $43,000. So that brings us to a total of $50,360. So from here, I tried to project, and this is very loose math, subject to change, but assuming that we bring in, let's say, 6 new members per month at the 1-year level, which is $40 for that annual cost. We would bring in an extra $960, and then average expense over the next 4 months. These are things like the MailChimp and a few other subscriptions we have, maybe spending about $700 per month. And this is just a very loose projection, still trying to gauge where those things are. But I think we'll be ending the year potentially around December, around the $50,000 mark. Now, there's a few other things that are important, just takeaways in my own observations as I work through a lot of this. And this may be common knowledge to some of you, but April to August are definitely our most expensive months. The poetry contest, the prizes, the checks that are mailed out to contest winners and to judges, that is the main expense from April through May. And then the annual book production, that seems to cost about $1,000. At least that's what I'm getting from Derek. And then our web domain, PO box renewals, all this takes place in this short window of time frame. The biggest expense, and you'll see that on where we're at actual to date, is the poetry contest. And so I'm roughly gathering that it costs about $7,500 in payouts and expenses to facilitate that. And this definitely has an asterisk. I need to work with our poetry contest committee, perhaps folks in the past, get a better understanding as to how that's funded. I know that there were some grants that came in to support, but just because of the nature that I jumped in and yeah, I worked with Charles quite a bit in the beginning of the year. There were things that I saw in the accounts going back to last year that I know they were income, but I just wasn't able to tell, was this a grant? Was this for a particular purpose, related to poetry contest, related to something else? So that's something that I definitely want to get more clarity on. I'll pause there to see if there's any questions before I go on to our actuals. Kathleen?
Comment, David Wayne, DW, I guess. I have detailed records of all of the money paid into the poetry contest for several years. I can share with you obviously later. I don't necessarily have all the payouts, but Terry Cox Joseph probably has that Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. Oh, great. That's great. I do have all the
And
payouts.
I certainly should have it for now, for this
Okay.
year.
Oh, great. That'd be very helpful. I have all the payouts, every check that I wrote to everyone associated with that. And so that was one thing I did right. I got that very well documented. So I think having that supplemental information would be very helpful. I appreciate that. So next I'll go to our budget report. Hopefully the screen changed there for you. No, all right, hold on. Let
Not yet.
me get back over to Zoom. I might have to share multiple screens. Oh, goodness. All right, hold on. I'm just gonna have to share one thing at a time. So all right, this is August 2024. This format that I'm using, and I'll explain it a bit. I use this with another nonprofit that I'm a executive of. Our budget is about 1.2 million per year. I'm not the treasurer, thank goodness. It's a heck of a lot more complicated. But what we've done is on the top portion, we have our income. And I made up each of these categories based on what I thought, what I've observed from PSV over these past months. So membership dues would be a category. You'll see here individual donations, grants, scholarships. I have these as zeros, but it's very well that things came in and I didn't really know where they sat. So again, an asterisk around all these values. Just bear with me as I try to explain the structure. And there was some money that I did identify directly for the contest, but total income, and this is just looking at our Truist account, $3,722. And then for operations, things like our monthly subscriptions and other things related to that, I came up with $2,287. For programs, I put the annual book award publication, the annual book publication that comes out of the poetry contest, the $500 that I paid to the publisher with Derek. So since that's out and that's already done, I just stuck that there. May not be the best place for it, but again, all these things are subject to tweaking with everyone's input. How much have we actually paid on the poetry contest so far? $6,180. And I know that this is an accurate number because this is the activity that's been I've been closest to actually paying out those awards and whatnot. These are other columns. These are all placeholders. Maybe they apply, maybe they don't as we form our next budget, but just acknowledging the different chairs that we have, and then for our VPs, the amount of money that's been spent. Again, if any of you have spent money and this is not right, please let me know. I'm more than happy to tweak and change and to make additions, adjustments as we go. But this is basically what I myself have paid out towards some of those activities to support. And so with that in mind, I will transition to what a potential 2025 budget might look like. And so what's different here is that, hold on, let me reshare because I think it got caught. It's looking a little weird for some reason, but I'll just keep working through it. Okay. So let's say that we get to the end of 2024 and a number of these categories have been cleaned up and they're correct and what have you. We're confident enough in the projections that we can say, hey, in 2025, we think we'll fall into that range. That's basically what I started to do to build this left-hand column. So looking at, let's say, a projected dues income of $3,500. This may be on the low side because, you know, I've been measuring some off of what the basic level is, but we have had people come in over the past 2 months. We've had 14 to 15 new members. A number of them were, I would probably say about 75% of them were 1 year, newer, renewed, but there were a few 2-year, 3-year memberships, and then lifetime memberships. So those definitely, anytime a lifetime member comes in, that's $450. That's definitely a huge bump. So this is a number, that being said, this is a number that can be played with. Individual donations, grants, sponsorships, contests. I just assume here, this contest, this would be what gets endowed into that. Once I have those figures from Kathleen, maybe I can get a better idea as what we know a future contest would bring in. And then that would bring our total income. And then for expenses, operations, you know, just there are subscriptions of things we know we're going to pay for. Now I do know, you know, how much the PO box costs, how much the web domain costs. These are all things I just didn't know previously. Programs, board of director meetings. Well, we're doing all that via Zoom. Poetry contest. There's so much with the poetry contest. It almost probably should be its own separate entity, maybe from the day-to-day operations. But executive. So I did know that Cheryl did some travel. In fact, she was doing a lot of travel. And so, you know, those things do have an expense that it may be smart or beneficial to make that money available in that event. And then for the VP budgets, I just put an even 300 down for all of them, with the exception of Eastern. Eastern did come in with a formal request for a bit higher number for some of the things that they've done in the past and would like to do again.
We can negotiate that, David.
Right.
One thing, can I just ask a question relevant to this?
Mhm.
One thing I did when you sent back your remark that we discuss it tonight was I actually got a document from Terry Cox Joseph when she was president about the expectations of VPs, and it includes how much money they at least used to spend. And 300 was what each VP was given, with the expectation, and I won't go through all the rest of the duties, but 300 is what she used for the 2 years she was president. So each VP got 300 for the year.
Understood. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's good to have that background. The way that I've seen it in the board, that, and of course, there's many different ways to go about it, but it's that same structure. Each regional director would get an allotted amount. It was for their use to organize, to do different things. And invariably, as we move through the time, some were more active than others. So in that case, let's say one person out in California is not using a lot of their money, maybe they may be willing to move that money over to another region that does want to make that available. We did that through a motion just to make it documented, but again, there's different ways to go about it. But all right, that's great to know, Kathleen. I appreciate that. So believe it or not, that was it. I know that was a lot of information. I'll make all that available. There's a few logistical things still to work out. It's been a lot to figure out. Flying solo, there's been a lot of logins and admin things to piece through. So I do have access to the PayPal. I have access to the Truist bank account. QuickBooks is still a work in progress. Let's say we're about 80% where we need to be. And there's just things to work out. But the core of what is needed to financially understand what's going on and to sustain that part of the operation is needed. So I'll stop there. That was a lot of information, I know, but does anyone have additional questions or comments?
David, Wayne, I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for putting all this together. I mean, starting to make sense of it. I know it's been a lot in a very short amount of time. So I really appreciate sort of the breakdown there. And I agree with what Kathleen was saying about having the VPs having $300 each a year or a term. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was a year. It was originally a year, I thought. So that was per your annual meeting, right?
Well, no, yes. Well, so I don't know if do you want me, David, Sam, do you want me to share the document that Terry sent me about expectations of VPs and how the finance is tied into that, or not?
I think if you email it to me and I'll send it out with the draft minutes, or
Okay.
or Kelly can. But yes, the history was that it was $300 for the year for each VP, with the expectation that that would be used during their annual meeting, festival, whatever. And if they needed more, then they needed to petition the board for more.
Yeah, that was my initial understanding. I have not ever used those funds. I mean, I've had funds from outside that I've used to conduct whatever business meeting or regional meeting we had. What was news to me in this presentation, however, was that there was money allotted on an executive level for travel, and that was kind of surprising. If there is such money there, could it be used for, say, an in-person board meeting, or for VPs who are from further regions away to come to the annual festival, say, or to do not just for the president, but for any officer, executive officer.
I'm not aware that there was a budget line in the past for executive travel. We traveled at our own expense in the past.
Yeah, Terry never had it in her budgets.
And Jeff didn't, and I'm not aware that Bob did.
I guess maybe what I'm proposing then is part of this general budget discussion is sort of maybe a general pool of funds, and this would be a major change, right? So a general pool of funds on the executive level that could include monies for your annual meeting, or monies for you to travel to a more centralized meeting. Say, so if you're from the Western region and you would like to come to the annual festival, but it's significant expense for you, we could offset that, especially if not all the regional VPs are using regional VP money for their annual meeting. Could it be a pooled expense and say, all right, this is what you have to pull from overall, and you petition the board for, this is what I want to use these monies for? Does that make any sense?
I think it's a good idea to continue giving each budget, each region the 300. but I also think having something like what you're describing, we can certainly put that as a line item in the budget. What we're trying to do is something that I'm not aware that we've done for a while, maybe ever, which is to have a proactive budget in advance of the year. And so now is the time to put in everything you think that is reasonable, both on the income and the expense side, with the idea that it won't necessarily finish when we try to balance it. Because this budget must balance 2 times. Once when we approve it at the beginning of the year, and more importantly, the second time at the end of the year. We don't want to be in deficit, generally speaking. Now, unlike the community college where I was president, where by law I had to balance the budget or I'd be fired, here, if we do go into the deficit, it's not the end of the world. But it's not a good practice for us to have a huge deficit, which has happened in the last few years at least once.
The only different thinking on that is that as a nonprofit, as a 501c3, we are required to not maintain too much in our savings. And in fact, I've been part of a couple of organizations. Unfortunately, they didn't have 3 million, Wayne, but they did not spend down their money adequately, and they got audited by the IRS. So we need to periodically take money out of the T. Rowe Price account and spend it. Otherwise, we will be in for an IRS audit about why do a bunch of poets have, you know, a 6-figure, not that it's 6 figures now, but you see my point, which is I think there has to be a delicate balance. Could I just make one more point, which is
before you move on,
okay.
First of all, planning to spend a certain amount of money from the income generated by our investments is part of a planned budget. So there's no reason why we can't say we expect each year a certain amount of money to come out of that, to be revised if the market crashes, which it will eventually at some point. So there's nothing at all unusual about doing that. With regard to the IRS, they generally don't worry if all you got's 50 grand. They could if they wanted to, but the ones they're after are Harvard with billions and billions of dollars, and people like that don't spend anything. So your main point that the money is there for us to have to support the mission is correct, and that's part of the income that with Wayne David's help, we can put on the income side. Again, as we monitor the budget, if the market changes, we may have to adjust. So anyway, now your second point was?
Oh, I just wanted to say to Joanna and the other regional VPs that not during this term, but during my prior term as a regional VP, I didn't spend any money the first year because I didn't even know I had any. And then when Terry told me about the $300, I used $150. And what I did, and this is in her instructions to VPs or the info she provided, was I didn't spend it on venues. I spent it to attract a poet laureate to come and be a featured reader. So I think that you're right. We don't necessarily need to spend that money if we meet at a public library, which is where I typically hold readings. But sometimes it's easier to get a high profile poet by actually paying them a little bit.
Yes, honoraria has been the most common thing I think used for that, but you can certainly be creative as long as it's not illegal. Joanna, you sent some. No, I'm sorry. That was a different item. Forget that. David, you're capturing these things, and the video recording I will post to YouTube. So if anybody needs to go back and watch part of it, it'll be part of our record. But these are items that we can put in. So I think on the income side, you can put a line for a planned withdrawal from our investments. And I think we stick with the 300, although I mean, we could, during the course of our conversations developing the budget, we could make that a different figure since inflation has come along. But again, we just want to be responsible for the budget when we're done.
Yeah, that sounds great. This is all really great feedback and really great context. So I will make some adjustments, and we will definitely look at things again before we all approve what 2025 looks like. But I think this is fantastic. Seeing as so we did not have this level of detail just a month ago, at least in the format provided. I think we're making some big steps. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Really good job of picking up the ball.
Thank you. It's been fun.
It will be easier next year for the board. Once we've gone through one full year with this, I expect that our developing this budget will probably take us into the third quarter before we actually approve it. And in the future, my recommendation would be that it's approved in the summer. But then you'll have a history and you'll have the formatting and everything. It'll be easier to do. Anything else, David?
Oh, that's all. I'll send that to you, David, and I'll try to put it all together. That way it's one document for folks to read through, and we'll go from there.
And Kelly, could you put your email address in the chat if you're able for everybody?
Sure.
Thank you. Is that your poetry book picture? It's a good one. Procedure manual. Again, I'm not sure we're going to have it complete this year. It would be nice if we do, but I would like a lot of it there, and we can then put it into the shared Google in PDF forms so that people in the future, like the document that Terry had created with expectations of VPs, that can be part of a procedure manual, for instance. Joanna, my memory was you shared with us, or was it just with me, some items you thought should be in there?
It may have been just with you. I'm not sure that I sent it to everyone, but I think it was in the email that you sent for this meeting, or a copy of it was attached.
I believe this is it here. Is that yours, I think?
Yep. That's me.
So these are some items that would be sections, if you will, chapters. And I think they're all excellent ones that need to be in there. So we'll include this with the minutes again, and I'd ask everybody, especially the veterans who've been with the organization longer, add things that look like they should be there, categories of things. And then what we'll need to do is find an author for each one to write a draft and then share it with the appropriate people and edit it.
Yeah.
Discussion, questions, concerns.
David, Sam, I think this looks good. I did notice on our website, there is quite a bit of details already. So maybe folks don't have to rewrite, because I started down that path of rewriting some things, and then I realized that the website does have quite a bit, at least a description, I'd say what the the North American Book Award is, right? So you don't have to start from scratch on some of these things and some of the roles. So just a food for thought.
Yeah, if we could find the minutes, the things on the web, whatever, that we can then put into a step-by-step manual, that would be, I mean, why recreate something if it's already there?
The only thing I would say, and I'm not sure whether this is what you're proposing or not, David, so I'm basically asking you to clarify. Things like financial records from the contest that we would want to share, I don't think should go into Google Docs because they've got
Yeah.
people's name, email,
Yeah,
how much they.
that's a different game altogether. This is simply an
Okay.
instruction manual. So for
Okay.
instance, your submittable stuff, how to do
Yeah.
submittable with a link to the video, that would
Okay.
be part of the procedure manual. How to run the contest, how to run the festival, how to develop the budget. Anything like that, just here's how to do it, a to-do manual. So and for budget development or for statements, the treasurer would have samples with not real data in it, but this is what it would look like with fake numbers in it. Now, I mean, you could even have as part of the procedure manual, you could have templates where the next person in a role could simply plug stuff in.
Mhm. Yeah, that
You're
sounds.
right. The financial records are public in the sense that we submit them to IRS or whatever, and we are responsible to the membership at the annual meeting with providing them certain materials. But on the other hand, other things may not, they're working papers and they aren't necessarily stuff that we would share with the world. But that's not what this is. This is simply a to-do manual.
Mhm. Okay.
So what are the next steps in creating said manual? How do
Well,
we break it down?
you
and go on?
already did your homework. Other people now need to do what you did, Joanna, and fill in categories that are missing. And then what we'll need to do is find a local expert who has experience in whichever ones they are. Or someone who's a tech writer and can interview people who are the local experts to develop the short, sweet, to the point to do manual or section for each item. So I think we need the table of contents. And you've already begun that for us, but we need to see what's missing and then assign a lead writer for each.
Well, I'll be happy to write up procedures for the contest because I'm going to need to do that anyway to help Nan.
Thank you.
I would be glad to edit whatever you want me to edit, but I feel like I'm too new to come up with any, like, I don't even know some of the procedures. So editing, I am right there with you, but the
Well,
writing.
here's a trick that I learned back decades ago when I was doing this at a college. You find people like Christina and Kelly who haven't done a particular thing, and you share the draft with them. And if they can't figure out what it means you've got to keep writing and rewriting it. The person who doesn't know how to do it is the audience, and it should be something that is understandable to a newbie. So your willingness to either give feedback on drafts and or edit is perfect. Unfortunately, I'm old enough that I've done a lot of this before. Doesn't mean I've done it right, but I have done it.
Well, let's just let you write the whole thing.
It ain't gonna happen. One of the things I
GPT
learned
can
in,
write the whole thing so that you don't have to use the brain power to do it. Just use Chat GPT.
my experience as a formal leader was find smart people, get them to do things, provide them the resources, and then hold them accountable. So you'll send in to me for now items for the manual. And it was Christina that said she would be willing to be a reader/editor. Okay, very good. And then we'll need to assign a lead writer. And to be realistic, this is probably something we'll be working on through the year. I mean, it'd be nice if we could get it done in a weekend, but that's not going to happen. We're all busy people, although I'm less busy since I'm retired. But it probably will take a while to develop it, and it'll be an ongoing project each year. We'll have to add sections and revise things, but at least it'll be a lot easier for people. I mean, in my time on the board, first as an at-large member and then as a VP, we have had some perfect examples, sad perfect examples of why we need it. I mean, Bob Arthur developing the dementia, Jeff dying in the middle of his presidency, our current president's crises. That's just it'd be nice if somebody in Jenna's position, for instance, if I weren't here to help out as needed, to have something that she could fall back on if she had to jump in at the last minute and take over. So, and then of course, every election, there's going to be some new people in some new roles. Thank you all. Any other items for discussion today or for future new business?
Jenna's got something.
Something came up in our chapter discussion last night, and I have been looking at our PSV, I guess you could call it our mission statement, what we value. And that is working in the school system and cultivating poetry in the classrooms. If that is something that is in fact part of PSV's mission, I guess, perhaps that is a topic that could be under procedures. Specifically, I was thinking about background checks, and making sure people were smart about working around children or in a classroom setting, especially some people who are mentioning doing workshops on their own with children on weekends that were not, excuse me, not formally part of a school system. If you do think a procedure for working within the school system belongs in this procedure manual, I'm happy to help work out the verbiage for that.
Okay. Nathan, who isn't with us tonight, is coordinating youth poetry, and Jay DeShay is at least one of the people doing working with schools. My experience with schools is if you're doing something with school children and it's associated with the school, they're going to make you do whatever is required. The issue is when you're doing something outside of school with people under 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
But the procedure manual for even dealing with the schools is still important as well, not just the health and safety.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm mindful that this is being recorded, so this will be worded delicately. Jenna, your point is extremely well taken, and whether it's on school grounds or not, people using the logo of PSV and holding official meetings with minors, it does raise a problem.
As a coach from middle school who's gone through safe sport training and a volunteer with other master naturalist organizations, I'm well aware that this is ground that should have lots of very clear and specific parameters.
Well, it's not really in the procedure manual, but we could have a code of ethics as well that we develop. But as you were talking about, Kathleen, I think the use of the logo, we do need to have guidance on that. Who is allowed to officially use our logo and our name? And so that needs to be both a policy and in the procedures. We haven't even gotten to policy manual, but let's start with procedures. But there's some implicit policies mentioned on the web and so on, but we really don't have a formal policy manual. But let's not take on too much. But that's something that probably needs to be done at some point.
I liked very much the idea of having a code of ethics, and that's somewhere that we could display on our website, and that could just be an understanding for all members and everyone involved in the organization. I think that's probably something we need.
Yeah, there's a statement of inclusivity on our current website, so there's the beginning of something, but it's not very detailed.
And my preference for it is it's phrased in a positive way. As members of the Poetry Society of Virginia, we will, we act this way, rather than don't do this, don't do that. It expresses who we are at our best and what we will mutually be accountable to each other for. So future items. Other board items or business for our next meeting. Now, I know some people are having trouble with the next meeting being on Wednesday. Is there, I mean, it's not going to be likely that I'll ever find a day when everybody is fine with attending. But what I do? Should I rotate the day of the week with that? I mean, as long as it gets put in your calendar.
Well, Kathy Haley and I, for different activities, have the same conflict, which is that we are always busy the second Wednesday of every month in the evening.
Okay. So October 2 is the first Wednesday in October.
Yeah, I can do that.
So we'll leave it at that for now. I'll send out a check with people, and if we're not going to have a quorum for sure, then we'll have to shift the date. This will be our regular board meeting. Items that will be carried forward would be whatever work's been done on the procedure manual and on the budget. And we'll see if you form a committee, if you have a committee, if you're, please send me who the members are, and I'd like to have give credit to all the people that serve on committees, that's and recognize them at the annual meeting, for instance, but also know that they are acting in that role during the year. So any other items for the October meeting right now that you can think of?
I have,
Well-
sorry, I have,
I was just going to say, welcome, Nathan.
sorry, this is, I don't know if this is something that should be properly addressed in committee or at the full board, but could we have a discussion on our annual contest going with CLMP guidelines moving forward?
On the contest doing which?
Abiding by CLMP guidelines, so that
In what sense, Joanna?
in all senses, in that there was discussion about who on the board or on the committee could participate in the contest, and the guarantee that judging is blind, and all those things that we could be upfront about, that have been sometimes discussion items historically.
I think we'll put that on the agenda for discussion. My prejudice is that's really non-negotiable if you're doing a contest in these days. Anybody old enough like me to remember Foetry.com? FOETRY.com. It was a major expose back, I want to say in the 80s, where they showed the, I guess it's, might as well say corruption, where a contest would be held at a university and the winners were always people from a professor's class or lovers giving each other awards and all that sort of thing. And that's why the code of ethics that CLMP came up with, was because there had been abuses, incestuous relationships and so on. So, and speaking of code of ethics, I think, I'm sorry, I knew when I got on the board that I couldn't submit to contests, that it would be a conflict of interest. And that doesn't mean people on committees can't. But if you're on the governing board, you give up certain prerogatives to.
Can I ask what your concern is, Joanna? Because I can tell you that the 2 years I ran the contest, the judges did not have, they were completely blinded.
This happened after your tenure. This happened last year, where some people were complaining that they couldn't submit because of some conflict. And so I think we just make it clear who, that a judge, I mean, the question of individual judges being able to judge a different, submit to a different contest. I think that can be clarified. Do you certainly?
And it was the 2 years that I did it, the rule back then, and it was posted on the website as well as in Submittable, was if you were a judge for a student category, you could apply, you could send poems to the adult. But no adult judges were allowed to submit poems to any adult category. So I don't know if that changed too, but thank you for clarifying.
That was where the conflict came up this last year, and people were concerned. And I think we just make that clear up front, that you realize that in serving as a judge, you can't do this. And if you don't want to serve as a judge and you don't want to be paid for it, then you can decline, and we'll understand that and move on. But you cannot have even the appearance of doing something wrong. It's not just the question of whether you're doing something wrong. It can't even, it has to pass even the vague bad aroma test.
Yes.
So, but we'll discuss it and confirm next meeting.
Thanks.
Any other items for next meeting? If you think of some, obviously email me, but hearing none, is there a move to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank
Everybody-
you. Great to see everybody. Hi, Nathan.
Everybody
Hi,
be well.
Christina. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Good seeing everyone. Thank you.